Hi friends, this is Linda and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. One of the most common questions I get when people are considering doing December daily or they have only done it a few times is, what stories do I tell? So today I have 50 story ideas for you for December daily projects. These could also be used as journaling prompts. So even if you're not doing December daily, this is still a fun list of stories to tell in December. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay guys, I'm gonna try this a little different from some of my other videos, so hopefully this works and you guys follow me and it's not too clunky. So before I dive into my specific story ideas, I did want to point out I have a free downloadable calendar that you can use to plan out your December. This is available on the Allie Edwards blog from one of the posts I shared over there back in September, and I will link to that in the description box below. But this calendar gives you the ability to write in each day the story you think you're going to tell, either ahead of time. Like for example, I know that I have a work hearing on December 20th. So that is probably going to be the day I tell the story about work. I know that I have a date with a friend. We're going out for coffee on the 8th. So that's going to be the story I tell that day. Other stories that you want to tell, but you don't have a specific day yet, it's got a list down here at the bottom. You can write those in. You could write those in during this video. So if you want to grab this calendar ahead of time and write down some ideas you get from this video or from other things you know you're going to do. For example, I know I'm going to bake Christmas cookies at some point. I wrote it here. I did end up putting it on here because that's when I think I'm going to do it, but I put it here because I didn't know for sure what day it was going to be. I also put like putting up the tree. I know I want to tell that story. I don't know which day it's going to go on. Okay, so now let's go ahead and dive into the stories. So I also get a lot of questions about the fact that I am a single empty nester, and a lot of people think this project isn't for them because you don't have small children, you don't have a big family, you don't have a lot going on, and I'm here to tell you that it is. You can make this work for you. So I try to come up with some story ideas that will apply to pretty much everyone. Of course, some of these things won't apply to your life because I can't have things, I can't anticipate what everyone's life looks like, but I'm going to try to come up with some ideas that are general enough with some sub-ideas that you can use. So number one would be one of my favorite parts of the holidays, and that is baking cookies and food. So one of the stories I tend to tell every year is baking cookies. So here's how I told it in 2016. This is something that I do pretty much every year. Here's again how I told it in 2020. And here's how I told it in 2018. Now you might not bake cookies every year. This is something that I do. So this is how I find a different way to tell the story every year. You can see all of these have a shot down of the cookies. I didn't do that every year, but I did in these years, and it happened to be on the 16th both of these years because that was the day I made the cookies. It will probably actually be on the 16th this year, which is kind of funny, but it changes every year. But I do find a different way to tell the story, even though it's something that comes up every year. So this one I have some longer journaling. This one I didn't even do any journaling at all. I just included photos. And I love that I have the ability to do that. Now, if you do not bake cookies every year, maybe there is a specific dessert that you do have every year for the holidays, or maybe you don't have holiday food at all. And maybe you just want to tell a story of something that you are currently eating. It could be something you're baking, something you're cooking, or something you're just getting out. Maybe you have a current obsession with getting McDonald's fries. Then tell that story. Does not have to be holiday related. Okay, so another story I like to tell is that of my wrapping paper. You can see here, this is 2019 and this is 2023. I actually ended up using very similar wrapping papers because in 23 I was kind of using up my stash, and that was my story. I said here, this year I'm using up older wrapping papers that have piled up over the years. For this one, I just said I'm wrapping presents. Here's a picture of the rolls of my wrapping paper. In 2021, I had a totally different theme of wrapping paper. And so these are all the wrapping papers that I use in 21. And what I ended up doing was creating a grid of these. And I actually think I've used up all of these, so I don't even have them in my stash anymore. You can see I didn't use them in 2022. 2023, again, I have purchased all new wrapping paper. So whether you are going all out and getting fancy wrapping paper, or if you're just using what you have, that can be a story. And there are so many different ways to tell it. You can include more journaling. These I happen to not include that much journaling on, but it's a great story, and it's something that pretty much everyone does this time of year. Okay, story number 3 are gift lists, wish lists, or letters to Santa. So if you have smaller children, the letters to Santa is a very obvious story idea. But even if your kids are older, or if you don't have kids, you can tell this story. So my daughter is in college now. So she was in high school in both 2020 and 2021, which are these albums right here. And in 2020, she drew out her Christmas list for me. I was doing a digital photo book, so I took a photo of it and stuck it in there. If I wasn't doing digital, I probably would have put her actual list into my album. In 2021, she made a PowerPoint. So I printed out the slides of her PowerPoint, and I included that in my album in like a little mini book in a pocket. If you don't have any children at all, that's totally fine. You can also tell the story of your own Christmas list. What do you want for the holidays? What gifts did you ask for? And if you're not in a family or that does a lot of gifts, or you don't really do that many gifts, what do you want this year? Maybe you buy yourself some gifts. Make that list, make that your story. Okay, story number 4 is the story of a specific gift. So rather than telling the story of a list, or maybe in addition to telling the story of a list, you might want to tell the story of a specific gift, either one that you're giving or one that you're receiving. So in this one, which I think is 2016, I made homemade blankets for both my cat and my nephew. And so I told the story of that, and I had some photos of the gifts that I was making. In 2020, I decided to get myself a TV. With my ex, we got ourselves a TV as a gift for the holidays, and we actually got it before Christmas. So the day that the new TV arrived, that was my story. So it can be a story of a specific item as opposed to just the story of the list. In 2022, I did tell a similar story where I told the story of the specific gifts that I got my daughter in her stocking, where I took photos of everything that's in her stocking and I put them in this little pocket here. And this will be super fun to look back on the years and think, what did I get her in her stocking for Christmas? And I have this visual representation. This might not be something I do every year, but I thought it was a super fun way to document specific gifts. Number 5, the story of your tree. Now this could be either the story of decorating the tree, which is what I told here, or just the tree itself. Take a pretty picture of your tree in your house, a picture of the lights, a picture of putting it up. And like in this year, in 2019, I lived in an apartment and I didn't really love how my tree looked, so I put it behind a flip up with a bunch of trees, and I thought it was super fun, and it's documenting how it looks at that time. This is in my old house and this is in my current house, and I had some fun taking some bokeh pictures of it. So there's a lot of different ways that you can tell the story of your Christmas tree, but most people put some sort of tree up, and if you don't, then you can tell that story. Why don't you put up a tree? Okay, number 6 is one of my favorite stories to tell, and that is the story of Advent calendars. Advent calendars have become a big tradition around my house because they're just super fun. So I have gotten ones for my daughter in the past. I've made ones for my daughter. And then I've gotten ones for myself. Both, I've gotten the Allie Edwards sticker one. I've gotten some other ones. This one I did a David's tea one. And so I took some photos of my tea. And if you are someone who's struggling to come up with stories and come up with holiday ideas to make the season special, I would recommend Advent calendars as a super fun way to make this season more exciting and more fun. part of December Daily to me is doing all of the holiday things and giving yourself a reason why and a motivation to like make all of that joy for yourself and for your family. And even if you don't have children, it very much is valuable to do it for yourself. So there are so many advent calendars out there you can get for an adult, for a child. This is a great story and something I like to include in my album every year. Okay, story number 7 is the idea of holiday movies or TV. So this is something that everyone can do. You don't have to have a big family or children to watch holiday themed movies and shows. In 2019, I didn't see that many holiday movies, but I decided to document them on day 23 so I could look back on the ones I saw in the season. And you can see I put the dates here, and one of them was actually on the November 28th, but it was still a holiday movie from this year. So I told that story. In 2020, I had a lot more time at home, so I watched a ton of movies and TV shows. I got into like the whole Christmas Prince series. I watched some TV shows on Netflix that were holiday themed, and I told that story. In 2022, I went out and saw a holiday movie in theaters, and I made that my story for the day. You can see it's super simple, just the movie poster. I added the date on there, and that's good. So I tend to tell these stories by adding the front of the movie, which you can find this just on Google Images. You don't have to take any photos yourself. That's what I end up doing, is just going to Google Images, doing an image search for whatever. So I would search the Christmas Prince cover, and then you would change the search criteria to only get large images, so you have a high resolution image. And typically you can find something that you can use, that you can print out for your album. I wouldn't say that a lot of these you can necessarily print like a full page, but this one came out really well for that size. So that is a great way to document movies and TV shows. And if you are not into holiday movies and TV shows, you can also just document whatever you're watching. It doesn't have to be holiday related. Okay, story idea number 8 is the idea of music. So I like holiday music, so I tend to try to document my holiday music, or it could be other music from the season. So in 2019, I just wrote out a couple of the songs that I had added to the rotation for the holidays. And so these were just 2 of them that I had that were Christmas songs that I had discovered for the first time in 2019, and I added them to my holiday playlist. In 2021, I told the story of just my favorite songs from the holidays by pulling out quotes from them and putting those on the speech bubbles and kind of telling the story here. And you can see this is like another one where I don't have any photos, and this is just a fun story that you can tell on any day. In 2020, Taylor Swift came out with an album in December that wasn't a holiday album, although it kind of has one song that's sort of holiday related. These are coming up, but still one of my favorite pages ever. And so I told the story of her new album that came out in December. So it doesn't have to be holiday related, but think about the music that you're listening to. Whether it is holiday related or not, there are a ton of stories there. Okay, number 9 is the story of specific ornaments. So a lot of people collect ornaments. So this can be the story of new ornaments that you picked out. It can be the story of an older ornament that you have that you've never told the story of, maybe one you inherited. Or it could be the fact that you don't collect ornaments. So I have a lot of just gold balls on my tree. And so I told the story here of how much I love just the uniform look of all of those gold balls. As I'm getting older, I'm liking to add more like different, interesting ornaments. But when I was younger and first out as an adult, I really wanted a uniform tree look. So I told that story. Okay, story number 10 is the story of Christmas or the holidays in your city or a city. So my city where I live is the capital of my state. I live in the metro area of the capital of my state, but most cities have some sort of holiday decorations that they put out, some sort of holiday events. So in my city, they tend to do a tree lighting. And so here's a photo of when I went to that 2 separate years. I also live very close to New York City. and I travel to New York City fairly often. I tend to go there in December. I was going to this year and that got switched, so that won't be in my album this year, but I have gone to New York City in December in the past, and in that case, I put that in my album. It was here and here. This is in 2022, and this I believe is 2019, where I had New York City in my album. But you don't have to go to New York City to tell the story of your city tree. This one is just my local town, and what they do for their tree lighting every year. Okay, so story idea number 11 is the idea of telling the story of the holidays or the holiday season through someone else's eyes. Now, this is a great and simple story idea if you have a child. You can tell the story of how they see the holidays. You can either ask them, or if they're small, you could try to capture the looks on their face or tell the story of how you feel that they respond to the holidays. But if you don't have kids, totally fine. I often tell the story of the holidays from my cat's perspective. My cat loves Christmas, which a lot of people think that's a little strange because he's a cat, but he totally gets it. So here is my story of this from, I think this is 2017. And here are some pictures of him trying to steal the stockings and get into his own stocking early. So because of him, I cannot fill the stockings until we're ready to open them because he will steal them. Here's him in 2020, where he found a specific gift that I had purchased for him, hidden in the closet, and he could not get over the fact that he wasn't allowed to have it till Christmas. And he kept scheming and scheming to try to get it. And here it is sticking out of the top of his stocking, and he could not wait to get into it and kept jumping up to steal it. So that is the story of Christmas from my cat's perspective. But this can be the story of Christmas or the holiday season from your child's perspective, your significant other, a friend, a sibling, a parent, anyone in your life or anyone that you know, and their perspective of the season. Okay, so story 12 is the story of holiday cards. So I have not always sent out Christmas cards, but I love sending out Christmas cards. I love receiving Christmas cards. And that is something that one of the things that I was almost motivated to do because of December Daily, because I wanted to document the story, and that gave me the motivation to do it and love the process. And that's totally fine if that's why you're sending Christmas cards. But in 2020, I documented them by taking pictures of the card and the envelopes. In 2021, I took a photo of me stuffing the envelopes and included one of my cards. And in 2022, I just included a card with no additional journaling. If you don't send out cards, or even if you do, you could also tell the story of the cards that you receive. You could take photos of them and include them. You could include the actual cards that you receive. I have seen a lot of neat ideas where people have shared the story of the Christmas cards that they receive. Okay, so story idea 13 is the idea of holiday events or seasonal activities. So these can be bigger events. In 2015, I went to see the Nutcracker Ballet in Rockefeller Center. And so that was kind of super exciting. And so I went to see the New York City Ballet. But in 2022, I went to see just a local theater ballet do the Nutcracker. In 2020, I didn't go out to events, but my daughter made a gingerbread house at home. In 2019, we went ice skating. I know I've also told the story of going or just doing a Christmas puzzle. It can be anything you want that is a seasonal or holiday activity. And maybe this is the motivation you have to put something on your calendar to do, because I don't know about you guys, but I am very much a homebody and an introvert, and I need that extra push to go out and do things. But once I do, I love them. And that's a great way to collect stories for your album. Okay, so story idea 14 is the outside of your house. So I put decor up on the outside of my house, and I like to document that. I have the story in 2020. You can see the lights on my house here. In 2022, you can see I have the lights, and I added a wreath. In 2018, I was in my old house and I still had some lights and a wreath. Whether or not you put decor up on your house, taking a picture of what your house looks like right now and documenting that is a great story to tell, because you might not always live in that house. And it is so fun to look back and see what this old house looks like. And I might not live in this house forever. And it will be so fun to look back and see these pictures of what my home looked like at this specific point in time. Story number 15, I don't actually have any good examples for it, but that would be the story of a holiday tradition. So what is something that you do every single year? I can think of some, but I haven't actually told that story in the past. And going through this list, you're going to see there's some that I don't have any examples of, and I've put those on my list of things I want to try to tell this year. So the story of a holiday tradition could be the fact for me that my daughter gets new pajamas every Christmas Eve, because that is something that we have just done that she loves, and she loves that tradition. You could have a tradition from your childhood that you want to tell. There are so many different traditions, big and small, and make that your story. Okay, story idea number 16 is the idea of holiday parties and events or get-togethers. Now, you might not be someone who goes to a ton of parties, and that's totally fine. If you don't do parties, you can either tell the story of why you don't like parties, or you can skip this story idea. But I have a few different ways that I have told that. So in 2018, one of my friends hosted a holiday party. So I told the story of that party, and it was a very easy one to say, okay, I went to this party on this day. That was my story for that day. In 2021, some work friends hosted a happy hour. And so I told that story, not really a traditional party, but I went out with some friends. And so I told that story. I have also in the past told the story of my office holiday party. In 2022 was the first time we had an office holiday party since the pandemic. I don't really take photos in the office. I'm not going to take a photo of a bunch of my coworkers that I'm not that close to, and they're going to think I'm very strange for that, and I wouldn't blame them. That is very weird and inappropriate. But I took instead a photo of just the food that I grabbed, and you could see my festive shoes. This is just an office party. And then for my job, I also have gone to a Christmas party that was hosted by a former governor. No longer thrilled to have these in my album because of things that have happened since then, but I do still like looking back on the fact that I was able to attend these holiday parties, and I documented that in here. Okay, story 17 is the idea of specific decor items. So if you are struggling to have a lot of stories, you can break up your stories rather than just saying, okay, we put up the tree and all the decorations and make that one story. You can focus on a specific item. This is also a good way to put more details in your album. So this was 2017, I specifically told the story of my stockings on the mantle and how much I loved having stockings on a mantle, because this was the first Christmas I had where I had my own house with a fireplace. In 2021 and 2022, both of those years, I showed from the different angles the photo of my garland on my stairs that I really, really love. And my cat was in both photos. One was in the daylight and one is at night. But this is a specific story about how I love having this decor on my stairs. This year, I will probably tell the story of some new decor items that I picked up and include that as a specific decor story. Okay, story idea number 18 is the idea of snow and weather. So where I live, it typically snows, so I tend to tell the story of the first snow. So in 2019, we had a ton of snow on December 2nd, and I took some photos of my daughter playing in the snow. In other years, I have taken photos of my house in the snow and used that to tell the story. I've done that here, here, and here. If you don't have snow, you can tell that story. You can tell the story of whatever your weather is in this season. If you live like in the southern hemisphere or somewhere where it's super warm, maybe you want to tell the story of how hot it is and how you're wearing shorts or going to the pool. However you want to document it, document the weather at this point in time. You might even want to screenshot your weather app. It's always fun to look back and see that context. Story idea number 19 is the story of specific outfits or clothing or fashion items. Clothing changes over time, so it's always fun to document it and look back on what were you wearing? What were your kids wearing? Or maybe you have a specific clothing item like a new winter coat or a new sweater that you love. For me, in this year, I told the story of how much I really got into wanting a nice flannel, and I have some photos of me shopping for flannels. These two I ended up purchasing, and this one I did not. But I loved the flannels, and that was just kind of a story I wanted to tell because that season I was really into flannel. I'm still wearing them now, but this was only a couple of years ago. In 10 years, maybe I'll be totally over this style, but it would be so fun to go back and look at it. Story number 20 is the story of this project or the crafting community or crafting in general. Scrapbooking is a huge piece of my life, and I have made it into more than just a hobby. I've connected with so many people through this project and through crafting in general. In 2021, I told the story of like everything holiday related with the craft community in one. So I was on Story Chat, I did a Christmas card swap, I did Secret Santa with some craft friends, I had a creative team Zoom call with some people that I was on creative team with, I had a Marco Polo group chat, and I had contributed to product play and to prep day. So I saved a lot of those photos and included that in my album because that was a big story of the season. In 2022, I released a class that was scrapbooking related that was launching in January, but it went on sale on December 16th. And it was so exciting to document that in such a big piece of my life. Even if you're not super involved in the craft community or posting your projects online, you can still tell the story of how making a December daily album is a big part of your season. Or even if you're journaling and you can tell the story of the fact that keeping a journal is so important to you. Okay, so for ideas 21 and 22, I'm showing you them at the same time because they're kind of similar, but they are very different and you can tell both of them. So day 21 is the idea of currently or around here or ing words. So what are you currently doing? So here I did eating, loving, watching, working, freaking out, 5 things. Here I said around here over and over and just told some stories about things that are going on right now. For idea 22, you can do specific items. So in 2021, I did 10 things that are just current items, not necessarily like in my purse, but just things that I have with me a lot. I had my vaccination card still. I actually got my booster shot in December, so that was kind of what prompted the story. I had my sticker advent calendar, my keys, a mask because it's 2021. I had my planner. I had nail polish, my favorite sunglasses, my favorite pen at the time, my AirPods, and my favorite candy. All of these little details were perfect little favorite things at that point in time. In 2016, I told a similar story by cutting up pieces of packaging of just a few of my favorite things at this point in time. At this point, it was bullet journaling. In a look term, I can never say that word, I was enjoying Starbucks, Diet Coke, scrapbooking, semi-sweet chocolate chips, and listening to Reputation. And it's so fun to look back on this because these are not my drinks of choice, my album of choice, or my notebook of choice anymore. But I still do like these things, but they're not my favorites at the moment. And it's so fun to look back on that. Okay, story idea number 23 are just the regular activities that you do. So I would imagine that you tend to do some sort of activity in your life besides just sit at home all the time. And if you don't, then maybe you might want to. Anyone can go out and do things. They don't have to cost money. They don't have to be that crazy. So let's see. So for many years, I had a weekly trivia team. So I told that story here in 2018, where I just showed me and my friends at trivia. In this year, I put Tuesdays are for trivia because we went every Tuesday. I told the story and included a photo of my trivia team at that point in time. And I kept our score sheet from the night, which is so fun to see because I don't go to trivia anymore, but I did it for years. And it was just an ordinary piece of life that I brought into December Daily because it does happen. In the holiday season, life doesn't stop. You continue living ordinary life. In 2022, some of my friends came over and we went out to brunch. So I took a photo with them and told that story. In 2021, I went out with a friend and our daughters to paint pottery. Not holiday related activities, but things we did. in 2019, I went to the Color Factory in New York City. And so I just documented that. That was an activity that we did. And none of these are seasonal, but what do you do? If you have anything going on, you're going to meet up with a friend, you're going to go out to dinner, anything. It could be a simple date night. That can be your story for the day. Story idea 24, I don't have an example of this, but this is a prompt that I have seen done, not just in December Daily. I don't know if I've ever seen it in December Daily, but in other projects, is the idea of telling a story from your senses, either the 5 senses or 1 sense. So what is the smell of Christmas? Does your house smell like Christmas trees at Christmas time? Do you have a scented candle? Tell that story, or just tell all 5 senses. What are you currently seeing, tasting, feeling, smelling, and listening to? Tell that story. Story idea number 25, noticing the small details or gratitude. Now, I didn't specifically have a gratitude story example to tell you or to show you, but I have definitely documented that outside December Daily. But it would be a very fun idea to do in your story, in your album for December Daily. You could either say, a number of things that you are grateful for at this point in time. You could ask everyone in your family what they are grateful for. You can also tell the story of just little details. It doesn't really specifically have to be gratitude, but just small details. So for day 15 in 2021, I took this photo of sunrise as I'm walking into work. I love the December sunrises because they hit at the perfect time when I'm coming into the office in the morning. And I was able to capture this beautiful sunrise reflecting off my work building and use this as my story. It doesn't specifically say gratitude, but it's a similar concept of what are you grateful for? What are you noticing right now? What are the good things of your life? Okay, story idea number 26, life milestones or big moments. Now, this might not happen every December for you, but this is something that I have told the story of when big moments happen in December. Now, this could be if someone in your family or you has a birthday in December, that can be your story. But I've also had other big things happen in December. In 2016, I bought a house, and I don't mind sharing my address on here because I don't live there anymore and I haven't for a while. But this is pictures of my house, and these aren't even my house, but these were like the listing photos of the house from the people that I bought before, and they happened to take them with Christmas items in them because that's when I purchased it, was in December. So that's when they listed it. So I was just telling the story of the house. In 2021, I bought a car. And so I had actually bought the car back in September, but it didn't come in until December. And here's a photo of me with my brand new car. And that was just a super fun, big moment that I wanted to make sure to document in my December Daily. Story idea number 27 is now and then. You can use this story idea to tell the story of the holidays now versus at some point in the past. This is especially good if you have grown children, where you can tell a story of how the holidays are now versus when they are kids. But you don't need to have children. Here, I told the story of how the holiday was then versus when I was a kid. And I compared these 2 photos of me in 2017 and 2000 with my sister and my cat at the time. And I talked about how the Christmas season as an adult is so different than the holiday season as a child. And that is a fun story that you can tell. You can also reflect on somebody else's difference between now and then, maybe your parents, between when they were children or when you were a child. There are so many different ways to compare now and then. It could even be last year and this year. It doesn't have to be a huge time jump. Story number 28. This can be the story of coffee, tea, or your favorite drink. I know this is one that a lot of people tell, the story of Starbucks, which I have done. You can see I have Starbucks in 2015. I have it again in 2019, again in 2020. But if you're not a Starbucks person, totally fine. I have stopped purchasing Starbucks. In 2022, I told the story of making coffee at home and what I'm currently drinking. If you don't drink coffee, you can tell the story of your tea or whatever beverage you're reaching for at this point in time. This is a great way to tell that story. Story idea number 29 is the story of today or a day in the life. So I only had one example of that. I was older, so I had to cover up some stuff. But I basically just said the story of today. and I wrote out things, the story of today, and repeated that prompt over and over again and told the story of that day. You can do the story like that, or you can do a documented day in the life. Maybe go around and capture your day in 10 photos for day 10 and tell that story of that day in your life. Story idea number 30 is to do some longer journaling of reflections. Reflect on where you are right now. How are you feeling? In 2020, I wrote, the holiday season looks very different from past years because of the pandemic. And I continued writing all about how I was feeling about this holiday season. In 2022, I wrote a letter to myself and put it behind vellum to hide it. In 2021, I also did some hidden journaling about how I was feeling. And I put a quote on here that says, things that matter most must never be at the mercy of things that matter least, to kind of talk about how I was feeling with my priorities and about my life at this point in time. So I hadn't yet shared this, but at this point in time, I was at the point where I was going to go through a divorce, hadn't yet made that decision for sure, but we were at that point where it was most likely imminent. And so there was a lot of reflecting I wanted to do. And I used December Daily as an opportunity to kind of do a self check-in. How are you feeling? How is life going right now? And this can just be some free form journaling. You can do it hidden like this so that people can't read it, or you can do it more, larger, where this one, I just journaled about all sorts of things that are going on. How the holidays looked with, being during the pandemic, how stressed I was at this point in time, what my work schedule was looking like, and all of the things that I had going on, and how I wasn't very stressed, or how I was very stressed, even though I was stuck at home. So that's just a great way to look back and really see how I was feeling at that point in time. Story idea number 31 are end of the year recaps and statistics. Now, December is the holiday season, but it's also the end of the year. So it's a great time to tell the stories of things that happened over the course of the year. And in 2018 and 2021, I told the story of all of the books that I read during the year and some of my favorites versus my least favorite. And I wrote all of that down and documented that as my story for a couple of days in December. You can also do a recap of, your favorite moments of the year. You can do all of the movies you watched. It doesn't have to be books. In 2020, I polled everyone in my family and I put our age and our favorite memory from the year and our least favorite memory from the year. Story idea number 32 goes along with that, in that you can tell the story of your people and basic statistics. So this one has favorites and least favorites, but you could just say, here's all the people in my family. Here's their age. What are they currently doing? What's their current job? Or what grade are they in for kids? And that can be a very great story. Story idea number 33 can be something looking forward to the new year. What are your plans for the new year? What are your goals for the new year? In 2022, I told the story of my planner and journal lineup that I had ready to go for 2023 and how excited I was about it. And I included photos of them with little flip ups about each of those journals. And this is not a holiday related story, but this is a change of the year story, which is super fun to tell. Story idea number 34 are personal collections or items. These can be holiday related or not, but is there anything you collect? Are you adding anything to your collection? So in 2022, I really started expanding my mug collection at home, and I added my first Christmas mug to my collection. So I told that story. Now you could tell the story of something new that you're adding to your collection, or you can show your collection as a whole. Even if it's not something that you have fully collected at this point in time, or a story you've told, it's very nice to get that snapshot. Like I could have taken a photo of all of my mugs. It would look very different from a photo now because my collection has grown and maybe I've gotten rid of some since then. So that would be a great story idea to tell. Story idea number 35, projects you are working on. I have this photo here of a knit blanket that I just finished at that point in December. So I wanted to tell that story. A few years I went with my friends to a wreath making workshop. And so I wanted to tell the story of that. What is something that you are working on right now or something that you've completed? What is a project? And can you document that? Story number 36 are, what are your other hobbies? Now, I have already kind of touched on that with some of the examples I've shown you, so I didn't pull out new ones, but this could be your reading. Do you read? Document that. Do you paint? Document that. Do you bake? Document that. What are your hobbies that are not scrapbooking? And document those. Story idea number 37, shopping or running errands. Now this can be either that you are doing holiday shopping. Here I just wrote last minute mall trip with summer to get gifts. Or this can be just, what are the errands that you're running? What are you doing? Where are you going? Are you going to the grocery store? Are you going to Home Depot? Where are you going? What are you buying? What are you doing? And for whatever reason, I only had 2 examples of this and they were in the same year. I also told this story here of going to the mall and going shopping, and I did some longer journaling with a picture I took versus this one, which was just that large stamping. Story idea number 38, your to-do list or your planner. In 2019, I made myself a to-do list as my story and just wrote all the things that I wanted to accomplish at that point in time, and I put them in here because I was feeling like I had so much to do, and that was my story. This could also just be a picture of your planner. If you are someone who keeps a daily planner or a daily journal, you can just take a photo of that and make that your story for the day. Story idea number 39, details of your home. We all have little things about our home that we love. They could be big, they could be small. Tell that story. In 2021, I got a new dining table, so I told that story. In 2020, I didn't really have anything specifically new, but I told the story of my fireplace and how much I love it and how much my cat loves it. And I also told the story of my shelves in my kitchen. And it's so fun to see the photo of how those shelves looked at that point in time. There's some holiday decor, there's some stuff that's not, and it looks so different now. I might tell this story again in 2023, and you could compare them looking back to see what decor items do I still have up there and what has totally changed. Story idea number 40, news and world events. Now this might not be something that you really want in your journal or in your album, but for me, I like telling the story of what's going on in the world to give bigger context to what's going on in my life. One of the big stories for that was the pandemic, of course. And so for 2021, I had I printed out a newspaper article about how we kind of went backwards. So I wrote 1 step forward and 2 steps back because we had a new mask mandate in our state. So I told that story about that here, and I included the newspaper article and a photo of me at work wearing my mask again. Okay, story idea number 41 is the idea of travel stories. So have you traveled in December? Or if you traveled in December or near to December, you can document that in your album. So in 2017, I went to Chicago from November 29th through December 1st. So I just documented that as my starting story in here and included a photo that I took while in Chicago. I visit New York City pretty frequently, like I've said in one of the earlier ones, but I documented that here. That's a good story. And one year I was in Boston for Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving was super late that year. So it kind of ran into the beginning of December. So I documented that as my story. If you don't travel for the holidays, that's totally fine. You can tell the story of how you're not traveling or how you don't want to travel. Or you can tell the story of travel you are planning for the future. I could tell this year the story of all the trips I have planned in 2024 and looking forward to them, if that is something that I wanted to document. Story number 42. I don't have any examples of this, but a really great one would be the story of technology. So in this photo here, you can see my daughter's phone. And I know that this is an old phone because the camera only has the one little circle. They all have like 3 now. So it's kind of fun to look back and see how technology changes. You often capture those things in your photos, but they're not the focus of your photo. What does your TV look like? What does your phone look like? What does your watch look like? Document all of those types of technology because it is so constantly changing. And looking back on it in 10 years, you'll see those differences. Now, of course, that's not a holiday related story, but it is such a great story to tell, especially when you're going to look back and do this documenting project every year. You can see how technology changes through the years. Story idea number 43. What are the current vibes or pace of life that you are experiencing? For me, that's often cozy. So I'm kind of pairing this with cozy stories. So I like to document the speed of the season. If you are trying to slow down and relax, document that. Here I just documented that I was relaxing with a book and the tree light and just enjoying that. Here you can see I'm working on puzzles and drinking hot tea. And again, here sitting by the fire, drinking hot tea, just documenting that slow pace of life. If your life is not busy and it is super quiet, that in itself is a story. And I wanted to kind of highlight that you can tell the story of just relaxing, just being quiet, how nothing is happening. That's a great story. If you are not in the season of life and you are super busy, you can tell that story too. You can talk about how your current pace of life is super busy, super fast, everything's going on. That can be your story. Story idea number 44. I don't have a good example for you, but this can be the story of a relationship. You can tell a story of your current relationship. I actually do have some examples, but I don't want to show those because they're from older relationships, but I still like having them there as something to look back on. It can be the story of a relationship between two of your children, or between you and your child, you and your parent, you and your pet, just the story of a relationship and what it looks like right now. It could even be a friendship with a friend. Our relationships change over time, and it is so fun to just pick a specific relationship and document it. Story number 45, work or school. So I don't go to school anymore, but you might have kids that go to school, or you might be in school, or you might have a job. And that is something you can document because it doesn't change. You're still doing it during December, and it is a big piece of our life. So I document it very often. Sometimes I have to have it in hidden journaling. Like here, I have a little pullout about some of the things I'm working on and how I have too much work. Oops, it's slipping. Trying to get it back in there. Okay. Here, I also made a pullout about I had a hearing that day. This one I'm just documenting just what am I working on at work. And here we had an office party for retirement. So I documented that. What is going on in your job right now? What is it like? Is it taking up a lot of time, a lot of stress? Do you love it? Do you hate it? What is going on at work? And document that. Or if you're in school, you can tell the story about school. What is your current schedule? What is your current workload? Did you just finish a semester? Are your kids in school? Who are their teachers? What is their school like? There are so many stories you can tell related to work and school. Story number 46. What is your current routine? I didn't have a specific example of this, but a lot of the stories could kind of double as an example of this to tell the story of what is your current routine. So what is your morning routine? What's your evening routine? What is something you do every day right now? I could tell the story of in 2023 that I play the Connections game every morning. Chances are I'm probably not going to play it anymore in 2024. I wasn't playing it because it didn't exist yet in 2022. And, maybe I will still be playing it for years, but it's still so neat to document that because this is what life looks like now, but it might not look this way in a few years. Okay, story idea number 47 are journal or reflect on your current feelings. Now, I couldn't find any specific examples that I hadn't already shown because this does kind of overlap with some of the other longer journaling story examples, but specifically document how are you feeling. This can be longer journaling, but this could also just be currently I am feeling stressed. Currently I am feeling happy. What are you currently feeling? Document that, document the why, and reflect on it. That is a great story idea. Story number 48. What is currently making you happy or bringing you joy? So I couldn't find a specific example of this exact prompt because I haven't used it before, but I think it would be super fun. And it's probably something I'm going to use this year, to use either the word happiness or joy as a prompt and list out all the things that are making you happy. Here I just showed a photo of something in my house that was making me happy and bringing me joy. Here I'm just documenting how much I love relaxing, and I have this little transparency that says joyful hearts. Or here it says there's no place like home for the holidays and how much I loved being at home. Document the things that are bringing you joy. Okay, story idea number 49. This is one of my absolute favorite story ideas. And this one gives you so many stories because you can take this idea and go back through the last 48 stories and use it to tell those stories. This is the story of what didn't happen. So what didn't you do this year? In 2020, I told the story of how I didn't go to New York City, how I tend to go to New York City and see the Rockefeller tree pretty much every year. And I collected some of those photos from 2010, 12, 13, 15, 17, 18, and 19, and made a photo collage of all of these photos of me seeing the Rockefeller tree and how I didn't get to see it in 2020 and why. Maybe this is the year that you are not hosting Christmas for the first time. Why? Maybe this is the year that you are not sending out Christmas cards. Why? What are you not doing? Okay, earlier I talked about the weather and how much it usually snows here. Well, in one year, it didn't snow. So I told the story of how it didn't snow and how much I love getting a white Christmas, but we didn't get it this year because it was predicted to be 70 for Christmas Eve, and how we weren't going to have a white Christmas. So using the idea of what didn't happen and why can be itself a story, and you can go back through any of the stories that I told or any of the story ideas that I listed and use why that doesn't apply to you. And story number 50 can include a reflection on the year. In 2020, I did this as an additional story, not a daily story, where I just said, I want to remember, and listed out all of the things that I wanted to remember about the season as reminders for myself going into the season next year. So it's things like online shopping is so much better than in-person shopping. We need to get a new tree topper. We completely forgot to pick one up this year. Cookie baking is so much work, but it's worth it. We need to start early and give ourselves a break before decorating and plan takeout for that night. So having these memories of things you're reflecting on at the end of the season, this can either be at the end of your album, or you can do it on the 23rd, or if you go back and fill out your album later, this can be one of your stories that you journal about at the end of the season, but reflect on that season. I hope that this video gave you a lot of ideas. I will put back on the screen my 50 story ideas here, and you can screenshot that to get your 50 story ideas. And if you want this list written down, but otherwise, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And as always, see you guys in the next one. Bye.